discovered it after the fact. I don't know, it just has that weird cult status that films sometimes get.
James Cameron is often celebrated as the architect of cinematic excess.
But he celebrated the work of the artists who worked for him at his studio.
He is the man who sank the Titanic twice, once for history and once for Oscars.
Mr. Cameron has written and or directed 9 films, including The Terminator and The Abyss.
The man who built an alien ocean on a soundstage and invented cameras to film a world that didn't exist.
Just being fought by the computers at a speed that humans can no longer intercede, you have no ability to de-escalate.
He is a director who believes that more is more, that bigger is better.
I think I'm more collaborative and more respectful of the people that I work with.
That audiences deserve to see every dollar burning on screen. But in 1984, while editing a low-budget science fiction film that no studio believed in, Cameron learned a lesson that would define his entire career. Sometimes the most important thing a filmmaker can do isn't show the audience everything. It's leave them wanting more. Buried in the archives of Hemdale Film Corporation is a secret that most Terminator fans have never heard. A scene that was fully written, fully shot, and fully edited into the original cut. A scene that would have ended the Terminator story permanently, closing every loop and answering every question. A scene that would have prevented every sequel, every franchise expansion, and every $1 billion that followed. And at the final hour, James Cameron cut it.
I was kind of the angry young artist at the time, and I don't think that way anymore.
This is the story of the factory ending. The one scene Cameron removed because he realized that closure was the most dangerous thing he could give an audience. In 1984, James Cameron was nobody. He had been fired from his only directing job, a low-budget Piranha sequel that became a humiliation he refused to discuss. He was working as a truck driver, sleeping in his car, surviving on the margins of Hollywood while nursing a vision he couldn't shake. A nightmare about a chrome skeleton emerging from flames, dragging itself toward a woman who couldn't escape. That nightmare became a screenplay. That screenplay became The Terminator. But getting it made nearly killed him. Cameron refused to compromise.
I was the cheapest resource available. So I had all these drawings of the Terminator and his endoskeleton and all that.
He shopped the script for years until Hemdale Film Corporation, a small independent company desperate for product, agreed to finance it for $6.4 million. It was a fraction of what the film needed. Cameron would have to build a science fiction epic with the budget of a slasher movie. The production was brutal. Linda Hamilton trained until her body broke down, transforming from a soft waitress into something harder and more desperate with every scene. Brief glimpses of an apocalypse the budget couldn't afford to show. But Cameron saved his most ambitious sequence for the ending. The scene that would bring the entire story to a definitive close. In the original cut of The Terminator, the film did not end with Sarah Connor driving into the storm. It ended with her destroying Cyberdyne systems. The sequence picked up immediately after Sarah crushed the Terminator in the hydraulic press. In the theatrical version, she is loaded into an ambulance, wounded but alive, and the film jumps forward to the final scene of her recording messages for her unborn son. But Cameron had shot an entirely different third act. In the deleted version, Sarah didn't leave the factory. She limped through the wreckage of the industrial complex and discovered something that changed everything. Sarah understood immediately what she was looking at. Reese had told her about Skynet. He had explained how the artificial intelligence emerged, how it learned, how it eventually concluded that humanity was a threat to be eliminated. And now she held the seed of that intelligence in her hands. The scene followed Sarah as she tracked the chip's origin. Through documents in the factory, through corporate records, through breadcrumbs that Cameron had planted throughout the film, she discovered that the factory belonged to Cyberdyne Systems, the company that would one day build Skynet, the company that would end the world. And then Sarah made a choice. She didn't run, she didn't hide, she didn't drive into the desert to wait for the future to unfold. She destroyed it. She smashed the CPU. She burned the records. She made sure that nothing from the Terminator's technology could ever be reverse engineered into the machine apocalypse that Reese had described. The original ending showed Sarah Connor not as a survivor, but as a warrior. A woman who refused to let fate dictate the future. A mother who protected her son by eliminating the threat before he was ever born. Cameron sat in the editing room with the assembled cut, watching the factory ending play out. On paper, it worked perfectly. Sarah's character arc reached its logical conclusion. The time loop closed. The threat was neutralized. Audiences would leave satisfied, convinced that the nightmare was over. But Cameron felt something else entirely. He felt the story dying. The problem wasn't the execution. Linda Hamilton delivered the scene with fierce determination. The production design was convincing. The sequence flowed naturally from everything that came before. The problem was what the ending did to the audience's imagination. The Terminator worked because it was relentless. From the first frame to the last, the film never let the audience breathe. The machine kept coming. No matter what Sarah did, no matter how far she ran, the Terminator was always one step behind. That relentlessness created a specific kind of dread. The feeling that some threats cannot be stopped, only delayed. The factory ending destroyed that dread. It told the audience that Sarah had won completely, that Skynet would never exist, that the future Reese described had been erased. The nightmare was over, the loop was closed, and there was nothing left to fear. Cameron realized that closure was the enemy of horror. The moment you tell an audience that the threat is gone, they stop feeling it. They stop thinking about it when they leave the theater. They stop waking up at night wondering if the machines are coming. He needed the audience to leave uncertain. He needed them to wonder if Sarah's victory was temporary. He needed them to feel deep in their bones that the future was still coming. So he cut the scene. The deletion wasn't just about ambiguity. It was about money. Cameron understood, even in 1984, that the Terminator had franchise potential. The mythology he had created, time travel, artificial intelligence, the war between humans and machines was too rich to abandon after one film. But the factory ending made sequels impossible. If Sarah destroyed the CPU, if Cyberdyne never recovered the technology, then Skynet could never be born. The future Reese came from would be erased, and there would be no story left to tell. By cutting the scene, Cameron preserved the loop. The Terminator's remains were still in the factory. The technology could still be discovered. The seeds of Skynet could still germinate, hidden in the wreckage, waiting for some curious engineer to find them. This was a gamble. In 1984, no one believed the Terminator would become a franchise. Hemdale wanted a single profitable film, not a cinematic universe. Cameron was betting on a future that might never arrive, but he was right. The Terminator earned $78 million worldwide, becoming one of the most successful independent films ever made. Studios came calling immediately, desperate for sequels. And because Cameron had cut the factory ending, he had a story to tell. The franchise would eventually gross nearly $2 billion across 6 films, a television series, and countless video games. All of it existed because Cameron refused to give the audience closure. The factory ending wasn't just a creative decision, it was a career-defining act of faith. Cameron believed his story was worth more than one film. He believed the audience would return if he left them hungry. He believed that the scariest thing he could do was whisper that the nightmare wasn't over. The removal of the factory ending established a principle that Cameron would follow for the rest of his career. Never close the door completely. Never give the audience everything they want. Leave them needing more. It shaped Aliens, which concluded with Ripley in hypersleep, the xenomorph threat contained but never eliminated. It shaped Titanic, which ended with a question about the diamond that audiences still debate. Cameron learned in that editing room that satisfaction is the enemy of obsession, and he wanted audiences obsessed. The factory ending also influenced how Hollywood approached franchise filmmaking. Before The Terminator, sequels were often afterthoughts, cheap cash grabs that repeated the original without expanding it. Cameron proved that a sequel could be bigger, deeper, and more ambitious than the original, but only if the original left room for growth. The MCU, the Fast and Furious franchise, every modern cinematic universe owes something to Cameron's decision to cut that scene. Linda Hamilton never saw the factory ending in its complete form. She had shot the sequence believing it was the climax of the film, the moment her character transformed from victim to victor. She had poured everything into those scenes, channeling the exhaustion and trauma of the production into a performance that was supposed to define Sarah Connor's art. When Cameron told her the scene was cut, she understood the reasoning but felt the loss. The theatrical ending reduced her final moments to a voiceover and a desert highway. The warrior she had become in the factory was replaced by a woman still running, still uncertain, still waiting for a future that might never arrive. Years later, Hamilton would get her moment. Terminator 2 allowed Sarah to become the hardened soldier that the factory ending had only glimpsed. But the original vision, the Sarah who ended the threat herself in 1984, remained locked in Cameron's archives, a road not taken that shaped everything that followed. The Terminator is not a movie about a machine. It is a movie about the impossibility of escaping the future. That impossibility only works because Cameron refused to let Sarah win completely. He understood that the audience didn't want comfort. They wanted to feel the same dread that Sarah felt. The knowledge that no matter how hard you fight, some things cannot be stopped. The factory ending would have released that dread. Its removal preserved it. When the film ends with Sarah driving toward the mountains, pregnant and alone, we don't feel triumph. We feel uncertainty. We feel the weight of a future that is still coming, still inevitable, still terrifying. We feel the machines waiting, patient and eternal, for their moment to rise. Cameron didn't just cut a scene. He invented the modern franchise ending. He proved that the most valuable thing a filmmaker can do is leave the audience incomplete, aching for resolution that only another film can provide. So here's the question that defines the Terminator's legacy. Was cutting the factory ending the moment the franchise became inevitable? Or would you rather have seen Sarah Connor destroy Skynet and end the story forever? If videos like this change the way you see the films you thought you knew, subscribe and stay with us. Because the most terrifying thing about the Terminator isn't the machine that keeps coming. It's the ending James Cameron made sure we would never see.